Hey everybody, welcome to the last Fit Tip Tuesday of 2021. This is kind of exciting. I cannot believe the year is wrapping up. And I did part two or added information about adjusting the crotch for prominent butt or defined waist. I reviewed low butt and flat butt. Now what I want to do is a little housekeeping video. When you're adjusting your crotch shapes, sometimes your inseams can get affected in a way where they're not the same length anymore. And I got a subscriber question about, how do you adjust your pants pattern if your inseams don't match? So this isn't a fitting video in terms of shortening or lengthening the inseam because you need it on your body. This is a video to show you how to adjust your front and back inseams so they're the same length. So what I want to do here is I made two versions of my leg pieces here. So in this first version, I have an inseam in the front that's shorter than the back. Now, some jean patterns and maybe even some contoured fitted pants patterns might have an inseam that's shorter in the back between the crotch and the knee, because when you ease that into the front that's slightly longer, it will help smooth the back leg. But for fitted pants that are not contoured, or even jeans that are not contoured, you really want your inseams to be the same length. I've never come across a situation where the back inseam needs to be longer than the front inseam. So if you check your inseams after you make all your fit adjustments and the back is longer, let me show you how to fix that. Now first, I'm just going to stack these two pieces up on top of each other, and I'm just going to pivot them so you can see that the front is in fact shorter, and I'm going to just make a mark where it hits so we can see that. So you can see in this example, this back inseam is about a 1/2 inch longer than the front. Now, a common way that I have even shown to shorten or lengthen an inseam is to draw a guideline across the pattern like this. Okay, and then what you would do is you would slash through the inseam and create a hinge at the side seam, so you can either lengthen or, in this case, shorten your inseam. Now, the one thing about doing it this way is you're affecting the top of the grain line. So before you go ahead and cut across and overlap the amount that you need to shorten your inseam, you want to check and see what the grain line's doing. So I'm going to shorten it. I'm going to overlap it, and I'm going to put my ruler here so you can see what happens. If you have to shorten the back, this is not a bad way to do it because it's pushing the grain line at above the adjustment farther away from the center back. And usually that's not a bad thing. It's when you try to lengthen with this adjustment that causes the problem. And let me show you. If I spread the back leg like this, okay, and then let me put my ruler back on the lower part. You always want to reestablish your grain line below the adjustment. Okay, so look what happens now. My grain line is getting very, very close to my center back seam. You don't want that to happen because it will throw off the grain of the pattern. And unless you have a very small waist compared to your full hip and butt, you really don't want this grain line to get close, super close to your center back edge. So I would really reserve, doing this adjustment. If you need to shorten it, you can do it, because shortening it will push the grain line towards the side seam a little bit. So you can do that. by overlapping the amount you need. So in this case, what I would do is I would measure, I'd make a mark below and I would just overlap at the amount I need to shorten. Okay, so that's a good way to shorten the back inseam to make it agree with the front inseam. Okay, and then you would just fill in the little bit of the inseam that's, not agreeing. You'd have to true that up. Another thing you can do, I'm going to tape this back together. And I almost prefer this method over this horizontal slash and spread. Instead of making a horizontal slash line, I'm going to make a vertical slash line, and I'm going to make it from just above where the crotch starts to curve inward to your inseam, like this. Okay, and then I'm going to make two little marks that will help me control the adjustment. So I'm going to measure, I have, ½ inch. So I'm going to make one little mark right here, and then I'm going to measure ½ inch down, and I'm going to make a second mark. All right, so now I know that's the amount I need to adjust or shorten my inseam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut here, and I'm just going to lower it by putting this top line down to meet the bottom line over here. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing is I'm lowering or shortening my inseam. Okay, so I'm going to tape that back up. Okay, so you can see now what I've done is I've shortened it. So if we compare, let's lay the front right on top of the back. You can see now they match. Now, in many cases, I don't know if you can see this, but the back tip of the crotch may poke up higher. But if you look ½ inch in where you're going to be sewing, it matches. So don't try to match the tip of the back crotch up with the tip of the front crotch. You're worrying about what it looks like ½ inch in from your inseams. All right, so that does match. But you'll notice here we have a little bit of a truing up issue. And just to make it easier to see, I'm going to put a yellow sticky note under that area so you can see what I mean. Okay, so you can see here we have like this little dent or a little divot from when I slid down the crotch here. So basically I'm just gonna continue that on and join that back up, and I'm just gonna trim that little bit. I'm gonna trim this little bit off. Okay, just right there. Now, if your pants have no ease at all, you can always give yourself a little bit of insurance by adding a little bit of ease over here. Okay, so I could come over here and I could just, just ever so gradually add a little bit to the side. But you can see that that makes my inseam match, and then depending on the shape of your inseam, you may have to true up down here as well. And let me stick another sticky note over here so you can see that area. Okay, so if it's just this little bit like this, I think I would just, just sort of skim a little off and add a little, like that. Okay, so that's how I would adjust this, and if I cut it off now, you'll see the final nicely shaped pattern here. I'll just cut this off. I can cut this off. And I'll just leave that little yellow there so you can see. All right, so see, now that's my adjusted back leg, and you can see if I put my inseams together that they match up perfectly. And I'm just going to put a yellow sticky note here up at the top so you can see. So if I just pivot this right to the top, you can see right here where I would be stitching would be about like this, and you can see they match perfectly there. I don't care that the back tip of the crotch sticks up a little bit. All right, so that's how you would shorten the back inseam if it's longer than the front inseam. And again, I just want to reiterate, this is only to true up your pattern pieces. This is not for fitting. This is for making sure your pattern agrees. All right, so that's one example. Then here's a second example. If I put my front on top of my back, you can see that the front is, in fact, a little bit longer than the back. All right, and I'll just pivot that in, and I'll just make a note. I'll just make a note on the front where they match up. So they match up right here. So my front is about 3/8 of an inch longer than the back. Now I'm going to go back to my beginning conversation to describe to you that if you're making fitted jeans that are following all of your contours, it's okay to have the front be a little bit longer than the back. And what you would do when you sew up your jeans, you would pin them at the knee notch, and you would make the crotch match, and you would stretch this part to fit the front. But if you're making fitted pants or trousers, and you want them to match, then we can do the same techniques that I showed you in the back to shorten the front inseam. So if the amount you have to shorten is 1/4 inch or less, just do it on the leg that you're adjusting. I would just adjust it like I showed here on the back. If you have more than 1/4 of an inch, you can also split it up. So let's say in this example, I don't want to lower my front, the whole 3/8 of an inch. Let's say I want to make it as non-invasive as possible. What I'm going to do here is I am going to draw myself, and I think I would do a horizontal one in the front because the grain line in the front is very centered, and shifting it a little bit isn't going to matter. So I'm going to slash my front leg, and I want to shorten it about half the amount of the total amount. So just to keep it exact here, I'm going to measure. Okay, that is, so actually that's just 1/4 inch, but remember I'm working with like a little half scale size here. So I'm just going to make a 1/8 inch guideline below my slash, and I'm just going to pivot it down that little bit. And you can see, let's check our grain line. I'm going to redraw my grain. You can see it really affected it only a very minimal amount here. You can see it moved it towards the center front a slight amount. I think that's okay. So now we have another 1/8 of an inch. So what I'll do on this side is I will make myself, on the back, I will make the vertical guideline, and I shortened it 1/8 of an inch here. I'm going to lengthen the back 1/8 of an inch. So again, just to give myself 2 guides to work with, I'm just going to make 2 little 1/8 inch, an 1/8 inch away. I'm going to cut this. And then instead of sliding it down, I'm going to slide it up the 1/8 inch and tape it in place. So the first thing I want to do is just double check and make sure the inseams match before I true up my crotch curve here. But you can see if I lay my front onto my back. Let me put a piece of yellow here so you can see. All right, you can see now those match perfectly. All right, so all we have to do is true up the edges. And because it's such a little amount here, I think I would just trim off the amount that's sticking up, because it's like a 1/16 of an inch. Okay, so I'll just actually just trim it right off. I'm going to tape it first. So just true that right up. Okay, and then you can see down at the bottom, I don't even have anything to true up here. Even though I slid it up, it still matches pretty well over here, so I don't have to worry about that. But in the front, we're going to want to true that up a little bit, and I think I don't want to cut anything off the tip of the crotch if that's fitting, so I'm just going to fill this in just a little bit to make it smooth like that. Tape. All right, so now I have an adjusted front and back, and my inseams match. So this is my little tutorial for creating inseams that match. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below and I will help you. On Friday, I will be having a special New Year's Eve edition of FabFit Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I really want to get together with you guys on the last day of the year, because starting off in January, I'm teaching for Stitches at Home the first weekend in January, so I will not have FabFit Friday because I'm teaching my Break Your Serger Out of the Box class at, well, it's from 10 to 12 Central Time, and then I'm teaching my Easy Fit and Sew raglan sleeve top from, I think it's 4 to 6 Central Time. I'll put the link in the description below if you're interested in taking a fun class with me to kick off your new year. You know, especially if you got a new serger for Christmas, that's the perfect opportunity to let me help you make best friends with your new serger. So I'll put a link to those classes in the description below, so you can take advantage of that, because again, there will be no FabFit Friday the first weekend in January. So I will see you on New Year's Eve. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching.